A single moment can blaze brighter than days, months, or even years. In that flash of fearless energy, you can spark change, feel alive, and rewrite your destiny, proving it's not about how long you live, but how boldly you live in the now.
I turned around to listen to the sound of war for the last time. The sound of helicopters, that discharging gunfire from above, and feeling the vibration from a city crumbling from the bombs released from fighter planes. A tap on my shoulder and the confident voice of my commander, Davis, tell me as I turned to face him.
"Soldier, thank you for your service, and here are your discharge orders."
I took a deep breath and exhaled. "You're welcome, sir." I gave my last salute to him as I entered the helicopter. The pilots and co-pilots signaled a thumbs up to me and smile as he told me, "Sir, just relax, this ride is commanded for ride home." I sat down and pulled out my orders that reads, "Specialist Samuel Thrope, honorably discharged from United States military effective this day." And with a deserving smile, I relaxed. A while later, I heard the familiar voice of my commander over the intercom instructing the co-pilot to land near the secret area near the unknown city. The co-pilot approached me with an uneasy expression. Because of my years of service, I knew exactly what his expression is telling me. Suddenly, I heard a beeping sound from the helicopter computerized dashboard and watched as the orders for this unusual mission arrive. The co-pilot immediately rushed it over to me.
"Sir, I received a call from Commander Davis, ordering for us to land, make an emergency landing to the city on the unknown. Commander Davis is on his way there to meet you."
He handed over to me the orders he received. I glanced over to my discharge papers and gently folded them up and inserted them into my bag. I mentally put aside my dream meal of a thick porterhouse steak, seasoned potatoes, vegetables, and a crisp salad, along with a cooled frost wine glass filled with red wine. I stared out of the window wondering what mission has suddenly interrupted my ride home. I see how the mountains, ocean, and forest reflected the beautiful artistry of God the Creator. And then a few moments later, the beautiful scenic artistry of God ended with a dreadful image of an apocalyptic land, of what is called by the military's City of Unknown, because of the name City Unknown. I heard the whispers among soldiers, because no one knows what happened to this city. I see the destruction to this city, and thought to myself, what the hell happened? The helicopter circled the area. The bodies cover the streets like a bed comforter covering a bed. The strange emptiness of human survival is extinct within this city. The helicopter landed. Both the pilot and co-pilot shut down the engine. Both took a deep breath and exhaled. I see their fear expressed on their face as they look around waiting for the helicopter carrying Commander Davis. Suddenly I hear Commander Davis' voice through the helicopter's radio.
"Specialist Thorpe, are you near?"
Taking a deep breath and exhaling deeply, "Yes, sir, we just landed."
"Good. I will send a flare. It will lead you to where we are stationed."
"We, sir?"
"Yes, I will explain the moment you arrive. And I need the mentality of the military specialist, not the discharge veteran. Understood?"
Yes, suddenly, the helicopter pilot started the engine. One of the pilots yelled,
"Commander Davis ordered us to return on Friday to pick you up. We will meet you here at this location."
I watched as they took off. My eyes followed the helicopter until I couldn't see it. I glanced around at my surrounding. I stared at an old rundown small shed. I cautiously walked toward it, along with checking the sky for the flare from Commander Davis. I entered the shed. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary to expect any danger. It was old and run down. As I walked around clearing the dust to find somewhere to sit, I found a loaded rifle and a pocket knife. I sat and laid my bag down, retrieving my water container, took a couple of swallows of water, and sat waiting for the flare. A few moments later, hear someone talking. I stared from a crack from the shed and see a man and a woman glancing around. The man suddenly stops as he sees the small rustic dwelling, unknowingly aware of my presence. They both walk slowly towards this old shack. I grab the rifle, my finger caressed the trigger as I aim at them. Suddenly, the woman fell to the ground. The man became upset.
"We had only 20 miles to go. We traveled this long way only for you to die. The time was about to beep for us to get our rest to keep living. How can you allow it to happen? Now you have left me alone. What am I going to do now?" My life is with you.
I watched him glance around in search of something. Suddenly he stared at the shed. He stood for a few moments. I felt he knew I was there. He slowly walked to the shed. My finger pushed gently on the trigger. Then suddenly his attention was toward a bush. He walked over to the bush and found a tarp. He dragged the tarp over to the female and covered her body. He sat beside her for a few moments in silence.
I should have listened to everyone and stayed. How careless of me putting our lives at risk. At least you would have died with our family and friends, than being alone out in this wilderness among this unknown entity that at any given moment will snatch our breath away. In secret, the priest gave me this book and these watches to survive. He believed because we hadn't succumbed to this defeat of losing our lives. It was meant for us to live. After reading his book, it gave me the courage to fight for us both, then to accept the deaths that surrounded us. Our friends and family didn't have the courage to take the risk to leave. I know your love for me had you give up on what was genuinely given to you, the love of family and friends. As we left, I felt their disgust and knew how they felt for me. I made a promise that I will protect you, and now you're gone, my love. My life is now empty without you.
Suddenly he gasped for air to breathe. In his battle to stay alive, his watch beeps. He desperately attempts to push the button on his watch. I could see that he was battling with an unknown entity that is taking his breath away. I ran outside to try to help him stay alive. He was surprised to see me. He grabbed my hand, attempting to use my finger to push the button on his watch. I'm not sure if his watch was some type of an explosive device. For my safety, I pulled my hand away from him. His watch stopped beeping, and then he died. I stood staring down at him, whispering to myself, what the hell just happened and for what reason? Commander Davis shot the flare. Not knowing what's going on, I immediately gather my belongings. Before leaving, I checked their bodies for any signs of a virus, but nothing was apparent. They both seem healthy. I noticed they both had the same watch. I took both of their watches and the book he received from the priest, putting them in a plastic bag, and ran toward the direction of the flare. I prayed to God to protect me before climbing over a fence label. Enter at your own risk to the city of unknown. As I walked the grounds of the city towards where Commander Davis shot the flare. Every place of business were filled with bodies lying on the ground. There was no stench of death, no signs of retaliation. The only apparent sight was death. As I gently touched one building, it crumbled to the ground. I walked as a tourist, glancing around at the disaster that came through this town. I felt as though I'm amid an apocalypse movie, with me being the stranger being watched by an unknown entity. Suddenly, a bird flew over me. I watched as it landed on top of a bell that stood without any damage on top of a church building. I walked toward the church, wondering what had happened. The vibration of my footsteps caused each buildings on each side of the street to crumble. Once I touched the church, waiting for it to crumble. However, it stood strong in the midst of this disaster, as though it's sending a corrective message. I glance around at all the bodies, crumble buildings, and the bell on top of the church, whispering a sarcastic statement. It's always the church that survives. The destruction of this city reminded me of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. At least in that story, it tells why God destroyed it. Now I stand here amid this unknown city covered with deaths, to give my commander a reason, purpose, and how to solve what happened here. The bird that flew over me flew from the window of the church as though it was inviting me in. I remember what the man had confessed, dying with the love of his life, about the priest. And with that, I entered the church. Everything stood in place, as though nothing had happened. I took the chance of walking up some stairs, holding the rifle as my guide as I took each step. After reaching the top of the staircase, a door flung open, crashing into the wall. I jumped, ready to shoot. My finger shook on the trigger as I waited for something to appear. However, nothing happened. I took a deep breath and exhaled. I entered the room and glanced around. Then I see the priest slumped over to his desk, with a hand gripped onto a pen to a notepad. I read his words written, "God, please forgive me, for I knew and still chose this fate." I sat on the edge of the desk, staring down at the priest, asking the question to myself, for what did you know? I remember the book the priest gave the man. Attempting to pull it from the plastic bag, suddenly I hear Commander Davis' voice from my walkie-talkie.
Specialist Thorpe, how close are you? Be careful of the streets and buildings. They will crumble just by a touch of wind.
I walked over to the window, staring down at my commander, making sure it was him communicating to me. Before I could answer, I heard a whisper.
Stay quiet and listen. My name is James Tillman's Conscience. I once were a pastor over a mega church. God snatched my conscience from my soul because of my reprobate mind. My soul is not judged for either heaven or hell. God has cast my soul to Sheol, the holding tank. For the unjudged, I have witness within this city the conscience of man has been judged by God and appointed their chosen fate. Some have been appointed to Sheol, just as I, some appointed to hell, and some were carried in the bosom of God angel to heaven. God has sent my conscience within your thoughts to be silenced, to listen to prevent confrontation by the enemy. Your warning from God, be careful and let not yourself be deceived. God has already equipped you with what you need to survive. However, just like the priest, it will only take a moment before your life will end. I am listening to your thoughts, and they aren't good. Remember, I am James Tillman's Conscience, sent by God to warn you, within one moment you can die. My mission have been accomplished, and now within this moment, your decision is your decision.
I can't trust this unknown entity within my thoughts. Maybe this is the reason this city has been destroyed. The words, "Sir, I'm in the church," were about to proceed from my mouth until I saw from the commander something suspicious. I glanced down at his fingers holding a cigarette. He took a couple of puffs. I remember Commander Davis stopped smoking 3 years ago. He had stated to me, the doctor warned him, if he takes one puff of anything, he will die. My heart started pounding hard within my chest. I remember what my mom had said. Your heart will warn you that the devil is around, so pay close attention to the beat of your heart. I watched as the commander paced back and forth. I quietly slid down and turned off my radio. I heard several voices. I took my binoculars from my bag and slowly peek enough to use the binocular focus on what was before me. They were not human. They stood with wings from within them. Each had labels of depression, anger, regrets, and pity written across their necks. My heart pounded as I whisper, "Shit, what's going on?" I gently stood, then suddenly the floor gave way. I landed hard on the ground, fighting to keep from being unconscious. Then they entered and stood before me. The beat of my heart pounded hard within me. I knew what stood before me. I whisper within myself, with only the breath God gave me at that moment, God is good. His angels surround me with an eerie sound of words that proceedeth from them.
Within your breath of this moment, you must concentrate on emotions of depressions, pity, regrets, your past failures, and you must stay in your past and be sorrowful of missed opportunities and anger. You must take the breath of life from your God. Give us your energy to not live, now and forever.
I feel my energy depleting. My fingers slide from the trigger of the rifle. In this moment of weakness, I glance over to the priest body lying on the floor, remembering what he had written on his notepad, asking God for forgiveness, for choosing his fate of believing what stood before him. Then I remembered what James Tillman's Conscience mentioned. Be not deceived in what I see, is not what I see. And in the next breath of life God gives me within this moment, I could only say again, God is good. The devil and his angel suddenly disappeared. The beat of my heart calms down. I close my eyes to rest. Then a soft voice whispered into my ears. I open my eyes and see an angel sent by God to rescue me.
Good morning, honey.
I glance around the room wondering where I am, taking deep breaths along with feeling the kisses from my wife that escorted me from this bad dream back into this reality. She caresses the side of my face.
The same bad dream.
I smiled at her, appreciating her affection towards me. Yes, another bad dream. I thought about the watches in my dream. As I stared into her eyes, I am on borrowed time, and God will remind me, such as the watch beeping in my dream, to stay alert and be aware. Anything that stands before me, whether it's good or bad, every moment to live is a gift from God the Creator. My wife was reminded of something and left from the room. She returned with a package and handed it to me. I opened the package, and what was wrapped within a plastic bag was the 2 watches and a book. A note inside the box stated, "You forgot these."
Ephesians 5:15-16. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil.
Mixed Emotion is a collaboration of short stories solely created from imagination for entertainment purposes only. In the event these stories may reflect some incidents of reality of any person's life or situations of any institutions is not intended but coincidental. Enjoy the fiction stories of Mixed Emotions by VG.